Hey, good morning and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Steve Day. I'm a business development manager with StrataCom. I'm based in Minneapolis, where this morning it's nice and snowy and icy and windy, and we got it all this week. Today, we're pretty excited to co-host a webinar in conjunction with Atlassian, the company that has made popular its Jira products, among others. StrataCom, as some of you know, has been a Cherwell, now Avanti partner for many years, over 10. And recently we've become an Atlassian partner, specializing in their ITSM offering, Jira Service Management. So one of the reasons we've invited you to this demo is that in StrataCom's opinion, the utility tool that's needed to help migrate current Cherwell customers to the converged platform simply doesn't exist. And we believe that really the only path towards Avanti would be a brand new implementation of their product. So we think that Jira Service Management is an excellent option for those companies possibly seeking a new ITSM tool. And we wanted to show you the product. So with us this morning is Rod Schmidt and Ryan Counts from Atlassian here to show us Jira Service Management. Um, Thanks again for attending. We will be recording this for future reference, and we'll mail it out to you in the upcoming days here. So I'm going to pass it over to Rod.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Can you hear me okay, Steve?
Yep.
Okay, if you can pop up my slides,
Yep.
I'd really appreciate it. Well, good morning, everyone. Thrilled to be here today. Again, my name is Rod Schmidt. With me today, you gonna share, Steve?
Yep.
I'm the account manager, actually at Atlassian. We're called Enterprise Advocates for ITSM. And with me today is Ryan Counts. He's my systems engineer. And we both come from Cherwell. So I'll give you a brief introduction here, talk about what our backgrounds are like. And Ryan, just want to say hi and maybe talk about your background a bit, then I'll jump into mine.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Counts, solution engineer for Atlassian, focused on Jira Service Management. Prior to Atlassian, I spent about 4 years at Cherwell prior to the acquisition by Avanti, and another year after that. So I'm a certified Cherwell administrator. So I've spent a pretty good amount of time in that platform, and looking forward to taking you through what we've got with JSM.
Great, thank you, Ryan. And again, I was with Cherwell for over 6 years, all the way back to the days of Vance Brown and people like that. So a great just experience at Cherwell. It was a great company. I thought they had a fantastic product. The user community was just the best ever. And 6 of my favorite years of my career were spent at Cherwell. Then the Avanti acquisition happened and kind of ended the story there. But we're not here to really bash either company. They're all good products, good companies, but we've got a really strong alternative here with the Atlassian Jira Service Management solution. And there's been a lot of ex-Cherwell people joining Atlassian. And for me personally, culture, big things, a great culture here because they're so customer focused. You can look up the just Google Atlassian corporate values. You'll see what they think of the customers. They're literally the lifeblood of this company, and they act that way. I really appreciate that. So, and I like their roadmap. Their roadmap for the future is really going strong, and we think we've got a great product here to demo for you. So, with that in mind, I know that in the invite, StrataCom, who was my go-to partner at Cherwell, by the way, they did many very successful implementations of the Cherwell product. I preferred them over, frankly, the Steve, you're kind of walking on the screen there with that. There you go, perfect. And this is why JSM. This is what the StrataCom people had come up with, spot on, right? A lot of people are using Jira already. This gives you the integration into the Jira product, even the service management side. We just moved into the upper right-hand quadrant for Gartner. A lot of credibility right there, very sensible pricing. Steve, go ahead. On my side, this is I normally tell people, and it aligns very well to what StrataCom had also said. With our product, you'll see a very quick time to value. It's a modern tool with a very intuitive UI UX. which is a problem with a lot of the, I call them dinosaur products on the market. Very easy to deploy and administer, and it's built on a Jira platform, which has been very successful. Lowest and most predictable total cost of ownership. We do not have concurrent licensing here. You do have to buy a license for every fulfiller. So if someone manipulates a ticket, they need a license to do that. It's not a shared license like it was at Sharewell. But even with that in mind, if you have a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio, we'll still be 20, 30% of the cost of the existing product sets at Sharewell and Avante. So, and even a little more than that in ServiceNow, it's in no comparison. People coming through the portal, no license required, just if you manipulate a ticket, and Ryan can talk about that more in a demo. And the reason we've been really successful and this product is coming on strong, like I said, a lot of Sharewell people have joined this organization because of the just the respect and notice that the Jira product has on the project management side for DevOps. And now you can do a seamless integration on the service management side and share work and knowledge. You don't have to cut and paste, move things over, log out of one product into another. And that's very error prone, very time consuming, very big benefit to the JSM product. Another thing, enterprise service management, HR, facilities, asset is all included in the product, and it's low code, no code, much like the current Sharewell product set had that available in it, and Ryan can talk about that. Go ahead, Steve. And just to back me up, here's a user story from Finish Line. They actually had moved away from ServiceNow. One of their big key benefits was going to the one platform, and the cost savings with our product was very good. They're very credible product with JSM. It can do everything that, frankly, ServiceNow could do. And this is a statement that came from the administrator who was initially against moving to the Jira Service Management product, but over time he really bought into it and appreciates it. Down at the bottom, a couple other stories. American Equity in Des Moines, Iowa was a Sharewell user who moved over to JSM. Again, from an executive level, they said we want one platform, made perfect sense for them. We're seeing that all over the marketplace. Hy-Vee, 1,500 licenses at JSM, that's all they run there. They developed a onboarding app for HR in 48 hours, believe it or not. And Ryan will show you some of the forms and things like that too here in just a minute. Dell uses our product. IBM uses our product. So both small shops and large shops can run with this product. 2 more slides. Go ahead, Steve. You don't believe me? You don't believe our customers? Talk to the analyst. 1 more slide. We just moved up on the Gartner, and you can see we're in a great position there, leader and visionary in the marketplace. So I know I can't take questions right now, but any questions come up, any follow-up needed, just work through the StrataCom people, and Ryan and I would be happy to help you out. With that, I'm going to go on mute and let you hear the person you really want to listen to, Ryan Collins. Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, thank you, Rod. Give me 1 moment to share out my screen. And 1 more moment to load my rich client. Oh wait, there isn't one. Sorry, couldn't resist. So let's spend a little time in JSM. What we're planning to do is kind of take you through the architecture of the platform a little bit. We want to spend a little time over on the self-service portal and how users can interact with IT in a few unique ways with the JSM platform, particularly when it comes to chat ops in particular, as well as the self-service portal. And we also want to spend some time over in configuration of the platform as well. Now, before we do, a couple of things I'd like to point out that I found were really key differentiators for me with the Atlassian platform. So one, I wanted to introduce you to the Trust site. So this is available at atlassian.com/trust, where you can gain information about how we secure the platform, about our compliance for the platform. But the key ingredient I wanted to point out here is our platform roadmap. So we are very public here at Atlassian with what is the future of our platform. So at any point, you can come in to the site and say, hey, I want to see what is the future for Jira Service Management. And from here, I can see everything that's in the near-term roadmap for the platform, learn more about each of those improvements. We're continually refining this particular platform. So a lot of great things coming up, even over and above what we're going to see today. What I also wanted to point out while we're in here is we also have a very rich community. That was one of the things that I particularly enjoyed about working with Sherwell is, going out and meeting Sherwell admins and users and understanding all the various ways that they were using the platform. Well, that continues with Atlassian. We've got a very rich community, both online as well as in regional areas doing meetups. So we definitely advocate, diving into those groups and helping learning from your peers and how they're using the platform. Okay, so going into the platform itself, I'm starting over on a dashboard real quick, and we'll actually circle back to the dashboards as part of the demonstration. One of the key changes that I've found with the JSM platform is the way that we organize our ITSM operations. So where Sherwell had a single incident workflow, for example, or business object, which also served as the service request business object. One of the things that made it a little challenging was when we had multiple teams that were trying to use that. And I ended up having to do a lot of work around my forms to say, hey, if it's this type of request assigned to this team, then let's hide these fields. Let's adapt the workflow and let's adjust who we're using as approvers. So a lot of override configurations in order to leverage that single business object for multiple teams. Well, in the JSM world, we organize ITSM in projects. So what that means is each of my functional areas, like my support team or my operations team, can in effect have almost like a containerized experience with ITSM. So within each project, I have my service requests, my incidents, problem, changes, and I can configure the platform in a way that I have the autonomy to have my own workflow, my own fields that only show up as part of this particular team. So as a result, it's much easier for each team to really kind of make the tool fit their exact workload instead of or workflow, rather than having to adapt how they do business to fit the tool. Okay. And in fact, setting up these projects is incredibly easy. All I have to do is go in and create a project. And as we can see, we've got a number of templates just out of the box. And if I kind of focus that on service management, we've got your basic IT service management. We've also got more general service management capabilities for the larger business unit. And as you can see, we're constantly expanding these templates as well. So within each template, we've predefined, okay, we know you're for an IT service management experience, you're going to have some certain request types out of the box. We don't want you to have to start with a blank slate and build everything out. Instead, it's, okay, we know that for IT service management, you're going to need incident management, service requests. You're going to need some service catalog offerings out of the box. So you're starting with some great best practices out of the box with these platforms simply by defining a template and defining your projects in whatever way makes best sense for you. Okay. Now, within each of these projects, as I mentioned, we'll have your core ITIL practices in here, and we're also going to have knowledge base associated with each particular project. So I can actually have my own kind of internal documentation just for my team, and I can also expose that for my self-service users. Speaking of the self-service users, the way we interact with users is in a number of ways. So we do have a help center or our self-service portal. We're going to spend some time over there here in a minute. We also have the ability, just like with Sherwell, to be able to receive email intake for service requests or incidents. But we also kind of added to that with a couple of additional options. So one is the ability to have an embeddable widget that I can now place on public-facing websites to be able to intake anonymized tickets into the system. So if I've got a public site that I want to enable customers to report issues with their products or potentially do like RMA processes, things like that, I can actually just embed this over on that public-facing website and automatically have tickets coming into the system. The other area that we'll spend some time on is our chat ops capability. So I know with Sherwell, we had some MMAPs for Slack as well as Microsoft Teams, and actually the Slack was embedded into the product. But it had very finite workflows in the system in terms of I could create a ticket, I could check the status of a ticket, I could close that ticket, but that was about the extent of it. And what we're going to find with the JSM platform is we can do so much more with our chat ops capabilities. So we'll spend some time over there here in just a few minutes. Okay, so for now, let's go visit the Help Center. And this is my self-service portal, and that can be organized into specific sub-portals for each of the projects that I have access to. Now, as a user, I would belong to a user group that may have access to one or more of these sub-projects. So what that means is I could have external customers that only have access to, say, the customer support projects. And that's going to constrain what I'm going to see in the portal in terms of knowledge content and service catalog offerings. Meanwhile, I may have some internal employees that access the same portal, but I'm going to see a larger breadth of services, including like HR, service desk, facilities, marketing, and other different business units that are being supported through the JSM platform. In addition to that, I have the ability to boil up certain topics. So knowledge content or service catalog offerings that I find are the most useful for users, I can perkle those up to the very top and let people know that those are available. Now from here, I have a unified search across all of those projects based off my access to the system. So let's imagine for a moment I'm having some issues with Gmail. So I can go throw some keywords at it, and as part of that search, we're going to search across all those projects to find Confluence knowledge articles, as well as service catalog offerings. So that's also one note I wanted to make as part of the JSM platform. We include a number of different components. One of those is Confluence, which is a really rich knowledge base or wiki platform that gives us a lot of possibilities. With Sherwell, we were somewhat constrained in terms of the multimedia content that we could include in knowledge content. With Confluence, many of those constraints are gone. So for example, I can have embeddable content to show maybe service status. I can also embed things like YouTube videos because many of my users don't want to read anymore. So let's get the kind of content that's going to be useful for them. But meanwhile, my users also can use that content and also give us some feedback to see, help us identify what content is resonating best with them and what content is helping us deflect potential tickets. Okay. So that's just one possibility through here. What I could also do is maybe I want to replace my notebook. Maybe it's starting to get a little old. The smoke coming off of it is a little bit different than it used to be. So I had time for a replacement. Well, as I go search through the knowledge base, we're also going to search through our service catalog offerings. And we'll go to request a new notebook. Now, just as with the Sherwell platform, we already know a lot about the user that's currently logged in, so we don't have to ask them for their name or anything like that. So we'll have those details right up front, and we'll push the user into a specific form of sorts for this particular catalog offering. So in the case of a new notebook, I need to know things like what model do you want? What about accessories? We'll see another example here in a little bit for like new hire employee, where that can be an entirely different form based off the context of what the user is trying to do. Now, what's also interesting is with each of these offerings, we'll have an initial summary that the user describes what they'd like to do. And where JSM kind of takes things to the next level is we take that as an opportunity to do one more search through Confluence. So often I found users bypass the knowledge base. They jump directly over to, let me just submit a ticket into the system. Well, that didn't give us an opportunity to potentially deflect that ticket through self-service. So with the JSM platform, we automatically go search for knowledge content directly in the service request forms, taking every opportunity to try to deflect that ticket through self-service. Okay. Now, once they've chosen that, then I can go in and say, okay, let's take a look at what models I want to choose. I can also choose accessories for each of my models once I've chosen those. And in many cases, I can also do a multi-select for these. So I can say, maybe I want Adobe Creative Cloud. I also want Box. I also want G Suite. So very easy to denote what we want with these tickets. There we go. Let me choose a MacBook over here, and we'll go ahead and submit that ticket. Now, through the self-service portal, at any point, I can come through and check the status of any of my tickets. So I can see my requests. I can see the ones that are created by me. And I can see, regardless of what specific service desk those are routed to, whether it's HR or IT service desks or facilities, I've got one-stop shop to check the status of all my tickets. So much easier for users that typically would have to bounce between multiple interfaces to figure out the status of each of these things. In any of those tickets, I can come in and see the status. I can also have the ability to share these tickets out. So if I want my boss to have some visibility into what's the status of this replacement, I can very easily add them into these tickets, or I can also suppress notifications for these tickets if I'm getting a little too many email notifications. Now, in addition to that, you will notice that this one does have a approval required for it, and I can actually approve it directly within that ticket. And that points to one of the other use cases of the self-service portal, and that is approvals. So users can always come in and check their queue of approvals and basically just walk through the list and approve as needed. One benefit of the JSM platform is that so far in this self-service experience, I am not using a license. So my users that are just coming in and initiating requests or checking status of their tickets, just like in the Sherwood world, do not require licensing. Additionally, approvals. If I'm just going into the help center and approving, I do not need to incur a license to do that as well. Okay. So we'll actually leave this one for just a moment and spend some time talking about other options that we have for raising tickets. So we include the ability to integrate with platforms like Slack or Microsoft Teams. And what that enables me to do is actually have like a central repository or channel where users can come in and say, I need a new account on Xero. And for each of those accounts, I can raise a request directly in the system, and I can basically fix an account problem or different types, which gives us an opportunity to present any specific fields that we need to capture as part of this particular ticket. So even though it's a little bit more of a broad stroke environment in terms of not having specific forms and layouts, I can still make sure I'm capturing all the details I want to capture. So I'll go ahead and add that description. And as soon as I put in that ticket, we can see that there's now a thread going on where JSM Assist, which is part of the JSM Premium and Enterprise entitlements for JSM, automatically picked up that request. And I can see that we've got a new ticket in the system. From a IT perspective, I also now gain a triage queue where basically I can look at, hey, we just had a ticket come into the system. And as we can see, not only can I see that that ticket came in, but I can actually start working that ticket. So I can take ownership of that particular ticket. So it's now assigned to me. I can change the status of that ticket. I can edit it. I also have the ability to add comments. So you're on it. And we will automatically monitor that channel and add those comments to the ticket within JSM. So I actually have the ability to almost never load up JSM itself. I can work my tickets directly in my ChatOps environment. So it just comes down to what is my preferred environment. I could always come in and update the status of these tickets and even close them out without having to log on to the actual JSM platform. So really interesting experience in there. Now that area is constantly being improved on. In fact, we recently acquired Precept AI to deliver a virtual agent experience that will be released in 2023. Okay, so we've spent some time looking at the end user's perspective, how they initiate tickets into the system. Let's go back and look at this from the agent perspective. So let's go take a look at this new notebook request that we just brought in. And as I look at this from the agent perspective, one, I've got all the details that the user populated on the self-service portal right up front. So I see what model they requested, what additional apps that they've requested in the system. Over on the right-hand side, I can also see the status of this particular ticket. And at any point, I can actually go through and view the overall workflow for this particular service request and see all the various gates that this would go through the life cycle of this ticket. All of this is fully customizable. I can add additional fields to this. I can have fields that are only accessible for the agent. I can have different workflows for different types of service requests. And as we can see, I can also have multiple approval gates as needed. In this case, I believe we only have one, so we'll go ahead and approve this. I can also quickly see my SLAs. So we'll track our time of response as well as our resolution SLAs, and I can define as many of those as I like. I can also see who has ownership of this particular ticket, and we also continue the knowledge base over on the agent side. So we automatically do a search of every ticket to see if there's relevant knowledge content. As I can see here, there's 15 articles that may be relevant, so I can drill into that. I also have the ability to create articles from here as well. So I can leverage rich templates from Confluence to have like troubleshooting how-to documents or more. Okay. So one other note is in the background, we have a automation platform. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities with the one steps that you're all probably very used to in the SureWolf platform. We'll see a bit more on how those are defined here in a little bit, but the reason I wanted to point this out is in this particular type of service request, we selected multiple cloud subscriptions. And that automation was able to go through, loop through that and say, okay, it's different teams that are actually allocating access for those particular applications. So we automatically generated subtasking for each of those entitlement requests. Those can now be independently assigned. I can either automatically assign those, or in this case, I can manually assign those to other people, and I can see the status of these subtasks as well. So I can see, okay, let's go ahead and mark this one as done. We'll say this is done. And if I reload this momentarily, we'll kind of see a little bar here that shows my progress of these subtasks as well. In addition to that, I mentioned before how we kind of containerize ITSM into projects within the space. So what that means is we do have the ability to come in and link issues with other teams. So I could potentially be in a ticket and say, well, where have we had other similar requests? I can do a quick search to see if there's other projects or other teams that have like requests. Or I also have the ability to go create linked issues in any other project. So the common scenario here, and we'll see more of this in the incident side of things, is, I could have a web application that just failed, and maybe I've got a development project being where my DevOps team lives over in Jira. Well, I can come in and actually create a bug linked to my originating ticket and basically pass over that work effort to have them inspect to see if this is actually a bug and maybe do a code fix that's linked to the lifecycle of my incident. Okay. Now, in addition to that, in the platform itself, we also support having multiple queues for tickets coming in. And these are essentially kind of like saved search filters for tickets of certain attributes. And I can leverage any of the attributes for any of my tickets to sort and route my tickets. So in this case, I have a few that are geographically based. So maybe I'm routing tickets for America into one given queue. I could also have queues for specific types of tickets like project intake. Or I also have the ability to have VIP users, so taking attributes from the user to denote where those tickets can go. We also support routing tickets and automatically assigning those based off of workload of my users. So in this case of this particular ticket, we checked and Alana has the lowest workload, so it automatically prescriptively assigned the ticket to her. A lot of potential flexibility in how we want to define those, okay? So speaking of which, I wanted to spend a moment to talk about how we configure these particular workflows. And I find it's a much simpler process versus what we're used to with ShareWolf. So in the context of a single project, I could be granted just administrative permissions to this particular project. And what that means is I'll gain a project settings option down here where I can come in and define one or more request types. So if we think about how the effort to create a new service catalog offering in Cherwell, well, that usually involves going to my table management, going to my subcategories and incident subcategories and defining a new entry there. Then I have to go to the admin client and define a specifics form if I need to capture specific details. Then I need to go to the approvals section for the incident business object to define any approvals I may need. I also have to go into the lifecycle management to define what that life cycle should look like for that particular type request. So in the end, a couple of things that made that difficult. One, I had to go multiple different places just to define a single service catalog offering. And secondly, I had to involve my Cherwell admin in order to do things like configuring approvals or setting up specifics forms. In the JSM world, what I can do is actually make individual users administrators just to their own projects, so they can have their own autonomy. And what that means is they can come in and define their own request types. So maybe we need a new application request type, and I can come in and define, I'll give it a name, a description. I can also basically stub out an initial workflow. So we can say this is going to be a service request or an incident. And we kind of use that as a starting point for this particular type of request. So I'm going to keep service request. Once we define that, I can also assign that to multiple portal groups. So this is kind of a logical grouping of my service catalog offerings. And I can also create additional ones. So I'll make that as part of my logins and accounts and create this offering. From here, it's now a simple three-step wizard. The first part is the request form. So where I mentioned before in Cherwell, I would have to go to the admin client and create a new specifics form. Instead, I can simply come in here and drag and drop what fields do I want to include as part of the intake for this particular request. And I simply drag and drop in whatever order I want those forms in. I can also preview this to see what is this going to look like on the self-service portal as I define it. When I'm happy with that, I can now define the issue view. So this is what my agents will see as they receive a request of this type. And I can choose, what fields do I want in the main area versus the context field, which is kind of the sidebar area of my tickets. And then finally, I define what does that workflow look like for this? And I can actually kind of have a different name for some of these statuses that are shown to the customer. So maybe there's some internal terminology that just works for IT. I can actually kind of translate that for my customers. Additionally, I can come in and refine that workflow. So we have a full workflow editor where I can come in and see what that workflow looks like. I can add additional status gates. I'll take accepted. And as we see, we just added that status gate. And now I just connect the pipes for how we want that to work. And we define transitions as we move from one stage to the next. These transitions are where we kick off post-event activities like sending out email notifications to customers saying, hey, your ticket has advanced. This is also where we could kick off automations to third parties like REST calls to automatically provision applications and whatnot. So let me give that a name. As we can see, we just created a transition and modified this particular workflow. What I can also do is maybe I want an approval at this particular stage. Well, all I have to do is come over here, check off include approval step, determine what's the number of people needed for approval, and then how do we look up that approval? Do we have a field in the ticket for the manager or approvals, or do we do a lookup based off the service that's being impacted? So a lot of flexibility right here just to add in approvals or other activities. With each of those stages, like I mentioned before, we have the ability as we transition from one workflow to another to kick off some automation. And that's where I can come in and say, maybe I want to auto assign a ticket, or maybe I want to trigger a webhook for third-party integration. A lot of potential in these workflows. Okay. Now, in addition to this, the platform also includes a global automation platform. And this automation platform lets me define very easily a number of different workflows to automatically trigger. So the way these are defined is a very simple process. I'll just create a role from scratch, and it starts with how are we triggering this automation? And it could be as soon as an issue is created or when certain fields change. But we can see there's also a number of other triggers that we can use, like when particular events occur or when SLAs are about to be breached. I can also potentially trigger things just on a schedule basis and say, hey, I want this automation to run every night at midnight to help me clean up data or maybe close out tickets that have been sitting too long. So I'll do a very basic when an issue is created. And from here, now I can add additional conditions for this. So I can have it do some comparison. See, is it this type of issue? Or is it, when a ticket reaches a status of, let's say, resolved in this particular case? And then once we refine this automation, we then have a number of actions we can do. So those could be anything from go create a related issue automatically, send an email to a customer. It can also be automatically assigning or creating subtasks for tickets. Or we also have the ability to go, send a Slack message to users or send a Teams message or a Twilio notification. These are all just baked into the platform. Or I could also go send a web request, so call a REST API to initiate some automation like provisioning accounts or locking down accounts. So a lot of potential in here. And the interesting part is this is all forms driven. So very similar to what we're used to with the SureWolf platform. I don't have to write any code to build out any of these automations. And in fact, if I were to go look at my overall library of automations, we also have a online automation library where you can gain from what your peers have created. So we've got a number of templates that I can come up here and grab and further extend my platform without having to do a whole lot of work. Okay. So with that, let's spend a little time talking about incident management. So that's another key area where JSM has some very interesting things to do. So one, as I mentioned before, we've got our own incident object that I can containerize and configure for each of my projects. So I could have a security team that may be working SecOps incidents versus my IT ops team who's working more traditional service impacting or degradation incidents. Each of those can be configured independently. Now, as part of the JSM Premium and Enterprise platforms, we also bundle in the our OpsGenie capability. So OpsGenie was an acquisition that we are folding into JSM. So what that means for you from an incident management perspective is you gain some interesting capabilities. So one, I can define an on-call schedule for each of my critical services. So let's take a look at this AWS support. Essentially, I can define who, based off the time of day or day of week that we receive a particular ticket, who are we going to notify of that particular issue. We can also define escalation policies. So if that person does not respond in a timely manner, well, let's escalate it up to their boss or their boss's boss as needed. And we can add multiple layers of escalation for any of these kinds of tickets. Okay, so this helps us make sure that the right people are notified very quickly whenever we have a critical issue. In addition to that, as part of the OpsGenie capability, we also have many tight integrations with your common monitoring and management platforms. So if you've got infrastructure that's, say, running up in AWS, well, we can take any of their monitoring capabilities and automatically bring in those events that they've identified. With each of these is simply as easy as defining the integration we want to leverage, providing some credentials to access it, and then also defining exactly what kind of processes we want to execute whenever an alert comes in. Again, no need to write any kind of code. We've done a lot of this work effort for you. Okay. Now that also includes the ability to define additional integrations in terms of like REST APIs as well. So that gives us a lot of flexibility. Now, once a incident is brought into the system, that will be generated as an alert, which can automatically raise an incident based off any attribute of those tickets that we need. As we open up a incident, we can see here's all the core details around that particular incident. So we'll track its impact and urgency. And as I mentioned before, we have the ability to go link issues to other teams. So if I need to have some of my DevOps team take a look at that, I can create a linked issue on there. What I can also do is do a quick check to see, hey, do we have any changes on the infrastructure that may have been the cause? Did we have a failed change that may have triggered this incident? I can go quickly do a check and identify that very quickly. Now, let's imagine in this particular scenario, we're starting to troubleshoot this, and it was a user that reported this particular issue. Well, over on the right-hand side, a couple of things are going to be useful for me. One, I've got that knowledge-based search that we saw earlier. I could also see any of the alerts that were brought in from Opportunity that may be relevant. What I can also do is, and let me make sure this example, looks like that one did not associate, so let's take a look at one other ticket real quick. When a user automatically assigns, we do maintain a CMDB as part of the platform, and we'll spend some time on that here in just a moment. And as part of that, we are going to link what affected services are related to this particular ticket. We can also pull over maybe their assigned laptop or desktop that may help us with troubleshooting this issue. In any of those cases, directly in a ticket, I have the ability to basically get a little nodal to tell me about that service or that CI that's impacting. So we had some similar mapping capability in the Sherwold platform, but where this goes a little bit further is one, we include a snapshot of details about those CIs. So I can kind of see, okay, this is a tier 1 service. I may be able to see who's the owner of that service or who should we be notifying for support swarming of this particular incident. What I can also do is go look at those related objects and say, hey, are there any issues open on any of those that I need to be aware of that may be impacting this particular instance? So a lot deeper insights. I also have control over how we graph this. And what that means is I can actually branch out further. I can also look at multiple different types of references and actually filter against those. So I may have some storage dependencies, or there may be some antivirus applications that kind of show some dependencies that may not be relevant. I can filter that out of this view to really get me a really good view that's focused on my operational need at the time. Okay. So let's imagine for a moment we've kind of done that initial troubleshooting and we've identified that this is a major incident. We've got an outage going on. Well, a couple of things we can do. One, I can flag this as a major incident. This automatically triggers, maybe some additional notifications. What I can also do is have multiple responders associated to this particular ticket. What I can also do is create a channel. So I can help swarm and get all the relevant subject matter experts that I need to help me accelerate resolution for this ticket over into a Slack channel. Or I can create a conference call and get everybody together to help troubleshoot this particular issue. I also potentially have the ability to go create a Zoom session and make sure that we've got all the relevant stakeholders on that. In whatever means helps us accelerate resolution of this issue, we can get them all together. Okay, so just a couple of ways that this platform is a little bit unique in the environment. So particularly for my major incidents, I also have the ability, by the way, to create post-incident reviews. So what that means is after we've resolved this particular incident, I have the ability to add that PIR and basically do some post-incident investigation to see what was the root cause of this issue. How can we prevent that in the future? So kind of a middle tier in between major incident and problem management. Okay. So that also includes, by the way, the ability to leverage our Confluence capability to generate templates for things like post-incident reviews as well. And we can automate much of this through our automation platform. So let me do a quick search. And I may have a postmortem for these incidents that we're leveraging templates within Confluence to document, what were the affected services? When did this occur? Who knew what? What teams were involved in this? how did we identify, the lead up to that particular event, its overall impact, and how can we do things to, follow up on that incident and make sure that we're, getting ahead of things and hopefully avoiding this incident in the future. Okay. Now, the next area I wanted to spend some time on is our assets capability. So assets, which prior to about 2 weeks ago was known as insights, is the CMDB underlying this platform. So if I go into assets, we'll see first and foremost one or more object schemas. So before I mentioned that we kind of containerized ITSM into multiple projects to help us kind of logically organize these and give certain teams certain autonomy, we do the same thing with our CMDB. So what that means is I could have an object schema for, say, my IT employee assets. And this may be a schema for my service desk team where they can come in and see all of the laptops that we've assigned to users. I can see all the other equipment that's been assigned. And for each of those objects, I can drill in and see, their life cycle status, additional details around their make, model information. I can also see a full history, as well as see what open tickets have we raised for that particular CI. Now, this is great for my individual, service desk personnel, but I may want more insight for my operations team. So they may have a separate schema that is more focused on the data center. And part of the reason we do this is from a security perspective, because what I can do is enable my service desk team to have access to that employee assets and devices and give them insight into what laptops users are assigned to in the system. But for my operations team, they may need deeper assets that we don't necessarily want to make available to the service desk. So all of these business objects, I can keep constrained to just the operations team. Now, as we see here, there's a wholly different set of attributes that we're tracking as part of my server infrastructure, as an example. We also keep relationships associated with those as well. And I can also visualize that in my object graph as well. So I can always come in and see those references, get a little bit more details about each of those, and see anything that may be relevant for those. So a lot more insights on this side. Now, when it comes to configuration, there's a lot of flexibility with the assets CMDB. One, I can track any kind of object. So in this case, we're seeing servers, we've seen laptops, but I could also track things like licenses, or I could track things like, my user base, for example. I can track any kind of object that I like. And in fact, I can define my own objects very easily in the system. So I could actually come in and say, maybe I want to create a wholly different object type. I can also come into any object and define what attributes do I want to collect for each of these. And defining new attributes is as easy as just coming in, defining its name, what type of attribute we want to capture. Is it numeric data? Is it a text area? Or is it a relationship? And I can define multiple different types of relationships for a given CI. So I could set this to be connected to other devices, for example. All of that directly in the interface. So I don't have to go create a blueprint to define the additional attributes I'm collecting. I don't have to go through the long scan. As soon as I create that new attribute, it's now available in the system. So I can very quickly adapt the platform to any new kinds of data that I want to gather. Now, what that also means is a number of our customers use this to further extend out to track things like, what about my customers? And understanding things like, who are the key contacts of those customers? What products are they entitled to, for example? So I may have a queue of, here's all my customer records. Here's, the key contacts at that customer. What level of support do they get? What products have they been entitled to? So additional information that can all be pushed up to incidents or service requests that may help my team accelerate resolution or fulfillment of those requests. Okay. Now, another question that we often get about the platform is, how do we get data into our CMDB? Well, that's very easy. With each object schema, I can define one or more import routines. And it's a very simple process. I just create an import. I choose the type of import, and we're extending this constantly. Once I've chosen that type of import, it's a simple mapping exercise. So then I choose, like for host, for example, I can define on the left-hand side, here's the source data that's coming in, and here's the attributes that I want to map that to in the system. I can also define, what are my primary keys that we want to use as lookup to identify existing hosts and update versus creating a new one. Once I've done all that, I simply set a schedule and we'll start federating that data. So again, no need to write any kind of code. I simply just define that integration point, how frequently I want it to perform, and we'll have data coming into the system. Okay.
Hey, Ryan, there are a couple questions. You want to maybe take a couple questions in the last few minutes?
Yes, that would be awesome. Okay.
Okay. The first one was, do approvers in the portal need a license?
They do not.
So it's very much like Sharewell is.
Yes, sir.
Is there support for file attachments per ticket? Is there support for attaching screenshots?
There is indeed. So I can attach files directly to tickets. I can simply come in, add an attachment. Additionally, users can also add attachments through the self-service portal as well. Let me see if I've got that one still open. Doesn't look like I do, but yes, users can also attach screenshots through the self-service portal or come back later and attach screenshots as well.
Perfect. And then John said that the asset management is not available to play with in the free trial. And he asked if you could display some asset management aspects. I think you might have just done that a little bit ago.
Yes. So I would point out, so there are different tiers of JSM. So we have JSM Standard, which, as was just pointed out, does not include assets. It also does not include the Ops Genie. The Premium Edition includes those. And then we also have an Enterprise Edition as well, which includes a big data lake and analytics capabilities.
Hey, so Ryan, on that account, I was going to make that recommendation at the end. What I know of most of the Sharewell accounts, I would think premium is the way they want to go, correct?
I would agree as well. The whole capability around the chat ops that we saw,
Yep.
The Ops Genie capability, and the assets, those are huge capabilities that really makes the premium offering really shine.
Another question is there a module for change management?
There is indeed. Out of the box, we follow ITIL best practices. So we've got standard, normal, and emergency changes in the system. And then you can also extend that further as well for any additional attributes that you want to track. Oh, I'm in the wrong project. That's why.
Then Derek, yep, go ahead.
No, please.
Derek Schobert, he must know you. He said, "Hey Ryan, great to hear from you. Great presentation." He was curious if Jira handles multi-tenancy and also what tier or tools needed to mirror their current deployment of Sharewell PPM.
Oh, okay. Yes, very familiar with Derek. So one, I would say for the multi-tenancy, I guess I would want a little bit more details on what he means by that. The most common example I would see would be the projects aspect. So I would have multiple teams, each running from their own projects, and they can have their own tenancy within each of those. That would be one aspect for that. As far as the bringing over data into the system, for a migration, there's a number of means that we have that can accelerate that. In fact, one thing I do like to point out is our marketplace. So we've got quite a large array of integrations, extensions that partners have built out, things that really kind of help accelerate. And in many ways, these also really help with the integrations as well. So, among those, I use a lot of those every day. So among those is like the Sheets capability, where I can actually just do a live table and update any number of tickets, simply like working in an Excel spreadsheet. This has the ability to also export data and import data very easily into the system as well. So that's one aspect to that. Going to his project management, that's where I would look at Jira Align, which is kind of our larger portfolio management of projects in the system. Okay. So, and also while we're on the subject, one other thing I also wanted to mention that we always wanted in Sherwold, but never quite got, was Kanban boards. And I now have that organically as part of JSM. And in fact, this particular Kanban board, I'm actually visualizing all of my tickets, my incidents, my service requests, and I can simply update those by simply dragging and dropping. So this was something we dreamed of over in Sherwold that I love using every day.
Awesome. Yeah, Mark is asking if this is cloud only or if there's an on-prem version.
So it is offered in two flavors. What we have been looking at today is our cloud offering. There is also a data center edition that can be deployed on-prem. There are some differences in the two versions. They are not the same as it was over at Sherwold. I would say there's about a 85 to 90% overlap between the two, but there are some subtle differences between the two platforms.
Okay, thank you.
But we have many customers on data center. I know Dell runs everything JSM related on data center, Ryan.
Yes, I've got a number of government customers that leverage data center.
Yep. John has one more question here. For asset management, is there support for SCCM? It's where they currently host asset management.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that would be configured. There's not a direct plugin in the cloud edition. I know the data center edition, there's actually a pre-built connector for SCCM. Cloud edition, we would set up a federation with them to pull over. That would be usually a direct database connection to query that data. So kind of very similar to the way we pulled that over from Sherwold.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody else have any questions? Just put it in chat. I know we're over a little bit.
Ryan, are you okay going over a few minutes? Or?
Yes, I'm okay with going over it. I would just point out to everybody that we've kind of given you just a slight taste of the platform. There's so much more that we could walk you through. And I do hope this has been a great use of everyone's time.
Yeah, like we said earlier too, just work that, if you need more information, work that through StrataCom. And certainly Ryan and I are happy to get back on additional demos or whatever you need. So.
Well, we really appreciate it today, guys. Thanks, Ryan and Rod. And product looks good, and we look forward to working with some folks and getting connected with you.
Okay, thank you all. Have a great day.
Yep, everybody have a great day. Thanks for attending. We did record, and we'll be sending that out in the next few days. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.